Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing. Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer getting set to kick off a 50-cent pick 4 on Pegasus World Cup Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Race number 10, the Grade 3 Fred W. Hooper Stakes, is at a one-turn mile for older horses. It is a big and competitive field. Let's take a peek. There's a lot of speed in this race, but kind of the story, just simply from an entry standpoint, is the number 1 Miles D, a horse that was third in the 2021 Travers. Mike has only raced once in 2022, is coming off a year layoff, but if he runs his best race, he's probably going to win.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you do have to, obviously you want to see what kind of price you're going to be asked to take on him first, Dan. It's a very long layoff. Coming back at a one-turn mile, which is really going to test his fitness for sure, especially if this pace is fast, and it looks like it's going to be fast. But I agree with you. He was a pretty talented horse as a 3-year-old, and if he comes back and he can still run, he's going to be a handful in here.
And he's the kind of horse that can sit back off a contested pace and benefit. We'll throw up the Timeform US pace projector, and I agree with Timeform US. There seems to be a plethora of speed in this race. The number 3 Mish has been on the lead in the pace call in his last 5 races. Doc Amster has shown some speed. Picking Up Pennies was on the lead last time out. Octane has speed. I think there'll be some gas and some hitting going on early.
I do too. I mean, it's hard to look at the race any other way, Dan. There are so many horses in here who have really good speed, and it'd just be surprising to see these riders try to take it away from them. This race is supposed to be competitive early.
Now, Miles D did return off of an 8-month layoff to win his maiden going a mile in his second lifetime start. It's even a longer layoff this time around. We only saw him once in 2022, and he ran a good third that day behind Olympiad, who turned into one of the top older horses in the country. He won 4 of his next 6, including a Grade 1, and was second in the Breeders' Cup Classic. After that race, Chad Brown said, Oaklawn Handicap, April 23rd. He got sick. Chad said, Pimlico Special. He was working in company with early voting leading up to Preakness week. Early voting was smashing Miles D. Early voting won the Preakness. Chad said, I didn't like how he's training. I'm kicking Miles D out. And he was true to his word. He's been out for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Those are all, sort of negatives when you're talking about a horse who's probably going to take some money in here, Dan. But based on what he's done when Chad has gotten him to the racetrack, you got to take his chances very seriously in here. It feels like the mile is a pretty good distance for him. And more than anything else, you can just go back and basically pull the replay of any one of his races. He's a strong finisher. So if he's right, he's going to be kicking hard at the end of this race.
When you're playing this card with your DRF Bets account, you get free formulator past performances. You click on the short comments. You can watch the races. I thought his Curlin was an excellent performance when he won that race. I thought he was a good third in the Travers behind Essential Quality, who was a top 3-year-old. Noble Drama is the number 2, and I think this is a horse that's lurking under the radar. A, because he has the right running style for this race. B, he was completely compromised by race flow and just the way the race shaped up last time out at Tampa over a speed favoring track.
Yeah, exactly. And he it seems like most of his, the bigger wins and the bigger figures, Dan, come against maybe a little bit lesser competition. But man, he's been a good horse for a long time. And he's not, he's going to be off the pace, obviously, in this race, especially if they go fast. He's not always a dead 1-run closer, though. I mean, if the pace doesn't develop for some reason, he can't keep closer. I feel like he's a little bit interested in here because he's going to get the setup. He's drawn inside. He's going to get to save some ground. And his good race gives him a real look at this thing.
Loves Gulfstream Park, 9 wins here, including the Sunshine Millions Classic, and gets a completely different pace scenario than last time out when he was wired by Octane at Tampa. Mish is up next for trainer Safi Joseph. He's one of the speeds. Here's his most recent start, and all in all, not a bad effort considering it was his first race in about 5 months or so. He went to this lead in a 2-turn mile in a 16th heat, and he just got tired late. The odds-on favorite Super Corinto is going to run him down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, if nothing else, a pretty good tightener. It feels like off the layoff. They let him use his speed. He did weaken at the end of the race. Prior to that layoff, though, on July 4th, then he was getting better. It felt like with every single start, and so maybe he starts moving forward again. The pace scenario feels like it really works against him here, though.
He won 3 one-turn mile races on or near the lead between February and May of 2022. But you're right, this is a tough pace setup. Octane had an easy pace setup when he won last time out. Let's watch that race at Tampa Bay Downs. It's a stake for Florida breds going 7/8 of a mile. And he went to the lead and he was able to get away with a 46-second half mile. He has enough left to dig off a solid horse in Willie Boy. They ran 1-2 all the way around the track. And like you, Mike, I kind of would rather take Noble Drama maybe out of this race.
Yeah, I just to me, this is a totally different pace scenario for this horse. It's also worth noting he was on a turn back in that race. Now they're stretching him out another furlong. I don't love that. He's got a ton of speed to his outside. He's got speed to his inside. And when you just take him apart on paper, Dan, he's got to run a lifetime best if he's going to beat this field.
A lot of things looking good for the 5 Hoist the Gold. He's a late runner. It looks like he's going to get a ton of pace, and he's just been running against some top horses. Here his last start, the Grade 1 Malibu against Taba, just a top 3-year-old of 2022. And Hoist the Gold finishes third at 29-1. He runs just fine to be beaten 5 lengths. He was in against Gunite, Elite Power, some good horses last year. You could argue class relief, right setup, he's running late.
Exactly. And I think that's a fair way to look at him here. He's supposed to have the setup that he wants. He's more of a closing sprinter. We'll see if the mile, stretching out to the mile dulls his kick at all. But this is the right kind of spot to run this horse in. He's also eligible, I think, in the Pegasus World Cup, but this is obviously a much better spot.
Black Belt is the number 6, and he's won 3 consecutive races since being claimed by Peter Walder, 2 at the one-turn mile, but now he'll be making his stakes debut. Let's watch his last start, a first-level allowance back on December the 23rd. He has the tactical speed to get himself in range, and that's where he was early. He took over into the stretch, and he goes about his business. He's in career best form right now, but the fractions have to be faster than what he faced last time.
Yeah, he got a perfect trip in this race, but he also wins very convincingly. The odds-on favorite could only chase him home to no avail in there, Dan. I mean, I guess Walder kind of doesn't really have any choice at this point but to step him up and see what he has here. This horse has won three races since the claim. He's won them all very easily. He comes off the best race of his life. See what they got.
Safi Joseph and Jose Ortiz will send out the 7, picking up pennies. Another horse on a 3-race win streak, stepping up out of the allowance ranks. Here's his last start on January the 7th, 3 weeks ago, and he just went right to the lead and took no prisoners in this race. He goes on to win in comfortable style. He earned a career best Beyer speed figure, but he's going to have to improve that number even further to beat this graded bunch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's another horse who, wants to show the way in his races. It feels like that's going to be really hard for him to do based, his races so far. And he comes in on a 3-race win streak. He's run well in all of those races, but he has to do better than that if he's going to beat this field, Dan. It's a really tall order.
Doc Amster is a horse I'd kind of liked if this race was more of a high-level allowance or a listed stakes race. Last time out on the Parks Dash, it was 5/8 of a mile. He was odds on, but it was just a race where they ran 1-2 around the track, and I'm not even sure 5/8 is his distance. He had no shot in the Vanderbilt 2 starts back, but he showed quality speed against Jackie's Warrior. Some of his other races against starter allowance horses are good. I just am not sure he's graded stakes good.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about it. I think not only do I think this might be just too tough for him, but I think he's another one. You have to question whether the mile suits this horse at all. They've been really reluctant to stretch him out. They've gone 7 with him a couple of times, and in those races, he couldn't see out the distance. How's he going to see this one out?
Endorsed, the number 9 is also on the also eligible list for the main event, the Pegasus World Cup, but this race probably suits him better from a distance and certainly a class standpoint. He broke an extremely long losing streak in this race, a high-level allowance where the favorite Dr. Post just didn't show up at all, and Endorsed got a very good trip tracking in the pocket, angling 3 wide on the turn, and running down some overmatched horses. He found the right spot in this race. He has plenty of races that indicate he can win a race like the Hooper. He just never does seem to win these kind of races.
Yeah, that's what I don't like about him. I respect that he got the job done there. I kind of feel like, as you've already pointed out, it kind of just felt like it was the right place at the right time for him. and he finally broke through again. Listen, this is a horse I had a lot of high hopes for early on in his career. It never really worked out for him, but he still runs some good races.
The number 10 is the Reds, and I've always felt that the Reds is sort of a grinding type that might want a little bit more distance than the mile, but perhaps the presence of a hot pace will set things up, and if it falls apart, the Reds could be one of the few running late. His most recent start, he was beaten less than a length in a hot-paced race at Churchill Downs. The third-place horse came back to win 2 stakes at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, we share the same concerns about this horse. I'm a fan of the Reds. I think he's actually pretty good. I do prefer him going longer, though. I don't know that cutting back in distance is necessarily a benefit to him, although he will be somewhere off the pace then. If they're going fast, I'll expect him to make a run late in this race.
The number 11 is Dean Delivers, who's hit the board in his last 5 starts, including a stakes placing going a 1-turn mile. Maybe he's better at 6 or 7. Here's his last start going 7 in the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector. And the horse he's chasing, Sibelius, when he's feeling good and gets the right trip, is pretty darn good. And Dean Delivers ran just fine to be second, a 91 Beyer speed figure. He'll have to do better against tougher going longer.
Yeah, exactly. He ran fine in here. He had a good trip. He's just no match for Sibelius, who, as you just mentioned, he's a pretty good horse, Sibelius. I guess no disgrace, Dan, to be second there, but I don't know. I would have liked to see him do a little bit more in the late stages there. Another horse who the mile, it's a pretty big question for him. He wants to be forward in his races too. I had a tough time talking myself into him.
I don't know what to make of the number 12 Prevalence, who got good during the spring of 2022 here during the championship meet. He won a high-level allowance race as easy as pie. He backed that up with a graded stakes win at Keeneland in the Commonwealth over Sloppy Going, and since then he hasn't run well at all. I know he has it in him, and he might have the right running style, but on the form he's in right now, I'm dubious.
I am too. He was in that Dean Delivers replay that we just put up there, Dan. He was in that race off of only a short layoff too, and he just could not keep up with that field. He was actually last when they came into the stretch there. He passed a couple of horses late, but pretty disappointing in there. I'm with you that I feel like there's a race that he could run that would get him there in this field, but he's very hard to trust. And I think it's at least worth pointing out, he's won 4 times in his life. He was involved early all 4 times, and he just doesn't seem as good when he's forced to chase.
2 of those 4 wins did come at Gulfstream, going a 1-turn mile. 12-Volt Man completes the field. Frankie Dettori takes the mount for Saffie Joseph. I've always been a fan of 12-Volt Man. We saw him chase picking up pennies last time out when he finished second in for the 62.5. I just think he's more of a restricted stakes type.
Yeah, I mean, I look at him like that too, but I like the fact that he's one of the horses in here who is going to sit back off the pace and just try to make a run, and it feels like this is going to set up for this horse. So I wouldn't totally dismiss his chances at a price.
It's a wide open edition of the Fred Hooper, and it's a great way to kick off a 50-cent pick 4 at Gulfstream on Pegasus Saturday. Let's take a look at our top picks for this race. Mike, I'm going to use Miles D as well, because while the layoff is a concern, Chad can get them ready, and it just looks like he's found a good spot from a class and pace standpoint.
Yeah, that's why I took him. We'll see how short he goes. I wouldn't, bet him at any kind of super short price, but it's a good spot for him if he can still run. I expect him to be there at the end. I put Noble Drama second, and I'm not quite sure he's good enough. I think this is the right race to run him in, though.
Endorsed, you can look at one of 2 different ways. Probably the most popular way to look at him is that he's 1 for his last 30. I'm going to look at him as 1 for his last 1. And that race came at Gulfstream, and he might have the right running style and several back races that indicate he's good enough to win this. He should be a fair price in here, but I also want to use Mike's Miles D. 1-2-10-5 for Mike, 9-1-6-4 for me. It's the Grade 3 Hooper on a supercard at Gulfstream. Good luck.